Give it a few seconds. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? I actually said I was going to scream, and I actually didn't do it this time. For those of you who are not talking, do you mind muting yourselves, please? Or I can actually mute you myself. Okay, great. So first, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm really excited about this. I love doing these kickbacks, especially when it's after work. So y'all can get some feedback from different recruiters in different industries. We are not going to say the companies we are with, just because we are not speaking on behalf of those companies. We are speaking on behalf of ourselves. So as you all know, for those of you who have been a part of my kickbacks before, you know that my kickbacks are really laid back. So please, everybody, make sure you are respectful. Nicole has joined us. Hi, Nicole. Make sure you are respectful. Make sure you just listen to the recruiters and what they have to say. Please understand that every recruiter will have a different opinion based on their experience, their skill set, based on the industries they've worked in, so on and so forth. So we all are going to piggyback off of each other. We all are going to give you different perspectives based on, like I said, just the diversity of the industries we worked at, the companies that we worked at, so on and so forth. I'm going to start with introductions, and then we're going to get into the questions that you all have submitted. So before I do that, though, hey, y'all, I see everybody. Y'all commenting all over the place. I love it. Tell us where you tuning in from. I'm in North Carolina by way of Durham. Where y'all at? Tell us. Chastity, where you at?
I'm in good old Sweet Home Alabama. Roll Tide.
Sweet home Alabama. Where the rest of y'all at?
I like to say I'm from the Chicago area, but I'm like sort of just the middle of nowhere. And Chicago's the closest place. If I told you where I'm from, you would have no idea where I live.
Got
So
it.
Chicago.
We'll go with Chicago.
I'm in Houston.
The
I'm in Massachusetts.
person said to mute y'all's tab, and I didn't mute mine. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm in H-Town, Houston.
Oh wait,
I'm
I
in
started
Miami.
singing. I started singing A Town Down. That's not the same thing. I did.
And I'm in Massachusetts, so it's a little thunderstormy here. So if I fall off the radar, I apologize.
Totally fine. Acts of God are totally fine. And Joseph, you are not in Russia. You're lying, just FYI. Joseph in the comments says he was in Russia. Okay. I want to start with introductions. Mike, I'm gonna have you go first and then we'll keep going.
Oh, pressure first intro. Here we go. So my name is Mike Pedito. I have been in recruiting and TA for about a decade. Before that was building sort of offices and growing staff before then, fell into recruiting like a lot of people. Most of my experience has been in the early stage startup world, building up a lot of kind of small companies and departments from there. Like I think a lot of you, I was laid off, kind of caught up in tech layoffs like a lot of people. It actually happened to me twice in a very short span of time. And then I sort of went into things for myself and started working with candidates specifically on job search advice and working on that end, while also starting my own company at working with small stage companies to establish good processes and policies in as many places as I could, rather than sort of continue to go to more and more and run into the same fate over and over again. So very excited to be here and kind of talk from that perspective for everyone.
Eliana, did I say your name right?
You did. I feel like everybody butchers my name and call me Elena, but you got it. I have been in TA for, I want to say like 5 years now, full cycle recruiting for about a year. I've done high volume recruiting currently in the cruise industry, working on HR, revenue management, digital, like you name it. But yeah, that's me.
The famous Nicole. I don't know if y'all know, but Nicole got like 8 million thousand.
She does.
80 million thousand zillion followers. It's FYI.
That's not true, but I appreciate it.
It's great meeting everyone. It's great being on this panel with so many other amazing recruiters. I've been in the recruiting space for about 5 years now. I've done everything from hospitality to tech, and I've probably recruited for quite possibly almost every role at this point. I, like Mike said, I also was laid off twice. And so I think that it gave me a really good perspective of what it's really like out there as a job seeker, and then kind of take that back into how I recruit. And so I try and post a lot of content here to help job seekers, because I was on the other side twice, also semi recently in the past 5 years. And so super excited to chat alongside everyone and answer some questions today.
Big Kev. I'm calling you that from now on. It just came out, so from now on.
What's up, everyone? My name's Kevin Grunwald. I've been in TA for about 15 years. I've worked in probably half of my career has been in staffing, and then the other half has been in corporate. So I get it from all sides. I've been on the RPO side a little bit as well. I've worked in multiple industries, aerospace, a little bit of biopharma, manufacturing, and then most recently for the past few years, I've been in renewables. Looking forward to being here and shedding some light on all the layoffs and everything, and just helping people and paying it forward.
Yes, sir. Last but certainly not least, Chastity got 1 million followers too, y'all. So go ahead, Chas.
Not at all, but hello, everyone. I am Chastity Duvion in Alabama. Typically don't even say where, because most people have never heard of it, but I'm in Foley, Alabama, and that is not too far away from the beaches in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, if you're familiar with our beaches here. I was previously a career coach for over 3 years, and then jumped into recruiting and have been doing full cycle recruiting for over a year now. Prior to being laid off, I recruited software engineers and data center technicians, and now I work in the electrical and utility space. I'm so glad to be here and honored to be on this panel with so many amazing recruiters.
Love it. Okay, so before we get started, Nicole, have you ever used StreamYard before?
I have once.
Okay, so you know that you can't respond to people using the platform. You have to be on LinkedIn.
No, I did not know that.
Okay. So I wanted to mention that. So for the comments that you see on StreamYard, where it says post a comment, that actually doesn't work. So you actually have to be on the LinkedIn Live and mute the actual LinkedIn Live, although I did not do it. Mute the LinkedIn Live so it doesn't echo, so you can pretty much engage with the audience as we're talking. Also, just a quick reminder, while the other panelists are talking, make sure you all are on mute so the other panelists are not interrupted. And then we will get started. Y'all, the panelists will be answering questions as other like 1 or 2 panelists are talking in the chat. So we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. We are not going to go over, it is 6:09 Eastern Standard Time. We are not going to go over 7:15 Eastern Standard Time because I want to respect everybody's time. So as everybody's talking, I'm going to be putting their LinkedIn links in the chat. It is not a hyperlink, so you'll have to copy and paste and put it in your URL to then go to their pages. Duplicate your screen so you don't leave the live, just an FYI. Connect with these people, follow them. They have great content. I see their content all the time. So please make sure that you are really engaging with them, because we are recruiters who really want to help. Although we cannot always give individualized sessions, just to make it fair amongst everybody. This is why we have events like this, so that you all can get your questions answered as best as possible. So we're going to go to our first question, and I am going to start with Big Kev. So Kevin, how many questions should you ask a recruiter in a recruiter screen when you are just networking with recruiters? How many questions, which is a very vague question, but how many questions is too many questions to a point where a candidate may feel like they're getting on the recruiter's nerves? I get that a lot.
Well, I don't think there is such thing as too many questions in this case, because you're talking to a recruiter You're going through a phone screen. You want to be as thorough as possible. It also shows the recruiter that you're, really interested in the role. So it's really good to go over, how long this position's been open, details about the job description, how quickly are you looking to fill this role, timeline on that, and then, what's the turnover like at the company? What's the culture like? What types of interview questions, should I expect? Are they going to do like a behavioral interview? What types of interviews are they doing?
So I love that answer because it does depend on the kind of interview that you're having. So what a lot of people don't know is that the kind of question or the context or content of the question that you ask could very well like make or break whether you are considered an ideal candidate. I've learned that in sitting in different interviews. When you ask run-of-the-mill questions, stuff like, so when can I expect an answer? Or you stop with those generalized questions instead of asking specific questions that will make the interviewers think. That's where you kind of mess up. I agree with Kevin. When it comes to just asking the recruiter questions, there isn't too many questions you can ask that literally will say, okay, stop asking this question, because that's our job. We're supposed to answer your questions. And if recruiters get annoyed by that, then that is not the recruiter for you, just an FYI. But it will depend on the situation that you're in. Chastity, should you apply on a job board or actual company career link? Which job boards are preferred? LinkedIn, Indeed, or Monster?
Yeah, that was a really great question. I think applying on the company website is one of your best bets, just because I don't know, how many times have you been on LinkedIn or Indeed and it has actually taken you to the company website from the link, and you get there and it says the position has closed or has now been filled. So I believe that going to the company website is a good way to ensure that the opportunity is indeed still available. And also to really do the research and check and make sure that this is a credible company, because we know that there are so many scammers and things going on like that today. So I think going to the company website is your best bet. But there are companies that do use these third-party sites, such as Indeed and LinkedIn, and that is pretty company specific. I've worked at a company that uses Indeed. I've worked at ones that have used LinkedIn as well. So it really depends on the company as far as which of those platforms they use. But the best bet is always to circle back to the company website.
I want to stay with you for a second. If a recruiter reaches out on LinkedIn, since we're talking about LinkedIn, if a recruiter reaches out on LinkedIn and asks for a resume, should you redo your resume to be tailored to the job requirements?
Yes, I would say so. You would want to, put your best foot forward and be able to make sure that you're showing off those skills and qualifications you have as it relates to that position. We know that, as you're doing your resume and applying to so many different jobs, there may be some certain skills that you hadn't included previously that could be applicable to this role, and you don't have it on your resume quite yet. So I would take the time to put in the work to go over that resume to ensure that you're hitting those key points as it relates to the position that you're applying for, especially if that recruiter reached out. So that means that there may have been some interest there. It could have been a sparked up conversation, but you would want to just put your best foot forward by putting those relevant skills on there.
I want to put up this question, since we're talking about being kind of seen by companies. Let me see. So the question is, so what about the position posted by companies on a job board and the requirements are an exact match, but you contact a recruiter and they give you a total different skill set required, which are not mentioned on the job description? How would you interact or reply to that? Anybody can answer this.
I'll jump in real quick. I think what I'm going to say, if you saw all of our faces when that popped up, I think the thing we're initially going to say is like, that doesn't feel like normal. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right? It does happen, but I wouldn't consider that to be like the norm of what does happen. If that happens, right, there could be a few reasons. It's possible the job description just changed at some point, and managers will add things throughout the process and say, now it's this, now it's that. And that's annoying. And it does happen. My real instinct sometimes is like, trust your gut sometimes. If it feels like no one knows what the heck they're doing, right? You're just like, you're talking to them and then they're saying it's this and now it's going this way and this is changing. Like, working there is probably very similar sometimes. So I could never say why one recruiter did this one thing and like replied in that way, but like give it a chance, see if maybe they're just changing the description, maybe a mistake was made, or if they're just kind of all over the place and kind of go from there and decide what you have to do for yourself.
I have one more question that was posted. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to add in there that, they could have applied to a second role at the company that might have been similar, and maybe they just got it confused. That does happen.
Yeah, we're not perfect. We make mistakes quite a bit. We're not perfect, y'all, just FYI. So another good question. If you get contacted by a recruiter directly to your email, but you can't locate said recruiter on LinkedIn, does that immediately mean the recruiter is a scammer? How can you identify recruiter scams? Good question.
I can take that real quick because I have a similar question. So I would say that just do your research, right? Look for the recruiter, make sure that if they're not on anywhere like on social media, if they're not like on LinkedIn, for example, and you don't see any details of that recruiter, then it could be a scam, right? Especially if there's nothing related to that recruiter for the company that they're reaching out to, in regards of.
I think the only thing I'm going to add to this, just because I know it's happened to me when I've tried to look for a candidate, is there's a bunch of different reasons why somebody's name might be different in an email signature versus on LinkedIn. Like, for example, a really common one is if somebody gets married or something like that, like they might have something that's just not up to date on LinkedIn. And so if you're looking for that exact person, there's a shot that they might not come up. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of scams. Some things that I think are really good to pay attention to is is the company email coming from the company that they're telling you they're recruiting for, is the best indicator. Is it coming from, like, for Royal Caribbean, we have .rccl, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. If those two things aren't matching up, I think that's a better indicator of whether or not it's a scam than whether or not you can find the person on LinkedIn, which can sometimes be a tough thing to do.
Let's actually stay there for a second with Ileana and Nicole, because you're right, Ileana. This does go to your next question. How does one know if the company they are applying for is legitimate? I have one who replied for me, who pretty much said for me to click on a certain link to then get my credit report.
Yeah, that's crazy, first of all. And I would say, definitely do your research. Go to the careers page. Does the job that they're messaging you about actually match up to what they're describing, right? Is it there? Is their recruiter live on social media or active, on social media? Are they asking you for personal information up front? If they're asking you for like payments, if they're asking you for to pay for training materials, like that's stuff that you should be like aware of, right? I would definitely look for things like that. Those would be red flags for me. Making sure that the company, is actually out there and is a legitimate company that they're requiring information about. I'm sorry, I think I'm cutting off too, so I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. We heard you just fine. I want to go back to Chastity, but I also want to still stick with Nicole. Do recruiters or companies search LinkedIn members by skills?
So in terms of skills, if we're looking on the back end on LinkedIn, there's what it looks like for us, the recruiter. I know this sometimes can be like ambiguous as to like what it is that we actually put in on the back end. If you're using LinkedIn specifically, there's a ton of different filters. And these are things like we can filter by location, we can filter by job title, by company, by industry. Skills is one of them. So it could be something if, like I said, let's say we're looking for a technical role, this person has to have SQL experience. That can be one example where skills is something that we really sort by, because if you don't have this one very specific skill that's just kind of one keyword, then it's not really a fit for the role. However, at least this is just a personal perspective. If we're looking for other roles, like let's say it's something in sales or marketing, I usually won't do skills because a lot of people will maybe have words or verbiage on their resume a little bit differently, but we will definitely use filters, like I said, that are like job titles, or industries, to help us sort of narrow down the candidate search, and skills is one that is available to us for sure.
I think Nicole covered that pretty well. Actually, she said what I would have said. So
let's go to Mike. So Mike, this is how the question was written. So I'm gonna say how it was written. What's the truth? That's how it starts. What's the truth? I've seen some recruiters, hiring managers, resume writers say the ATS, or applicant tracking system, can disqualify your resume. Others say it's not true. It really should not be this convoluted. That's how they say it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to say what is essentially the truth, but I know people sort of are going to take things as they want in here with some ways. This is going to start with a big answer, that there is no universal truth in hiring, right? So one thing you're going to hear from one person does not apply to someone else, does not apply to someone else. It's just not that simple. However, I don't like talking in extremes, but there are virtually no good recruiters out there allowing some type of machine to make the recommendations and the decisions for them. Now, where does this come from, right? Because this is the question. A few things, and I don't want to get into a debate with a lot of people. I don't want to get into a lot of kind of trash talking with a lot of people or anything like that. However, most people who tell you there is an ATS robot to beat, or that there's a thing you have to do with an ATS, also happen to be selling ATS-friendly resumes and ATS-friendly courses, and know the way to beat an ATS. But they don't work in hiring. They don't work in HR. They don't work in recruiting. Maybe they did a decade ago. Maybe they were a product manager for a few years and have designed a very good product on how to get a job now. But when you talk to recruiters, when you talk to people who are in there doing it every day, they are telling you, I'm reading these resumes. Now, are there systems that do score a resume based on some words? Yes, and it'll provide a percentage score. iSIMS is a big one that does that. However, recruiters still know they have to check it, because those are not perfect, because weird things show up as keywords sometimes. Or there are people out there saying, put your keywords in the white space and put them in the resume. And people are opening resumes and looking for these. There is no robot making the decision, I promise. There are overwhelmed recruiters in the bad hiring market. And a lot of posted and screenshots of the number of resumes you may have to see. The reasons you often get a rejection email at 9 p.m. is because that's when they can finally sit down and start to look at the 1,000 resumes that came in that day, because this job market is very tough. And it's hard, and we know it's frustrating. And it's a shame that there are people out there preying on the anxieties of job seekers by telling you this stuff. I tried to Google today because I knew this question was coming. And I was trying to Google like what ATS systems actually rank resumes, actually assign scores. And the first 3 pages of Google results were nothing but companies selling things on how to beat ATS. Right. And that's the frustration with this. And that's where it comes from. And that's why recruiters get so mad and fired up about this stuff, because it's almost an insult being told, no, we're not sitting here reading through 1,000 resumes, and the machine is doing it for us by somebody who isn't doing our job. So I get very passionate about it. I'll stop there because I could go for like an hour, but that's the truth.
Nicole, your turn.
I feel like I was like vigorously head nodding the whole time. Mike summed it up perfectly. And for anybody, I think, who would think of like, no, but maybe this company would, but maybe this company would. I've worked at startups and I've worked at FANG companies, and nobody in the spectrum has used some sort of ATS robot. The only time that I've ever seen any question that will knock out a resume is something that is like an irrefutable truth. Like, for example, if let's say we need somebody in Miami, Florida for a role, and the question is, are you open to working in Miami, Florida? And you answer no. That might be the only time where a recruiter can program something in the system that at that point would send you some sort of automatic rejection notice. But to 98 99% of the time we don't do that because we do take things case by case, and a lot of systems don't even have the capability to do so. I think a lot as these like behemoth machines, and some are, and some ATSs are an Excel sheet. An ATS just means a way to track applicants, and so a lot of them don't even have capabilities, even if we wanted to, and the ones that do aren't necessarily being used in a knockout way, because we would never want to miss somebody based on a keyword. So totally agree to everything Mike said.
Definitely. Mike, you have a suggestion or an idea to do a whole session on this one topic. So everybody's agreeing that they want to hear your one session.
If I can plug, I do have a TikTok, Realistic Recruiting. Realistic Recruiting on TikTok, over 45,000 followers in 4 months there. I go live every single day, 1, 2, or 3 times a day for about an hour to an hour and a half. I did 110 hours of live in the last 60 days. And trust me, I talk about this topic a lot on there. So if you're on TikTok, feel free to follow. If you're only on LinkedIn, you'll get some leftovers of the stuff I post here after there, but you will hear those long rants from me every night if you're looking to hear them.
Mike, feel free to put that TikTok link in the chat so people can just access it. So Mike, let's stick with you. Should the selected candidate always negotiate? The fear is the company saying no and or rescinding the offer.
That's hard because, right, I always fear and shy away from the word always. Because yes, are there stories of people offering or counter offering and having an offer rescinded? Yes. Are there times that offers are non-negotiable? Yes. Do I want everyone to make as much money as possible and hope you can always negotiate as much money as possible? Yes. But if we are talking honestly about this stuff, you need to pay attention. And the advice I always give, right, is to have honest and open conversations about money from the start. That is the best way to have any type of negotiating power. If you want to make money in your career, you have to be comfortable talking about money. And I tell this to people all the time. You can't shy away from it. So if you are setting the tone on day one with these companies of this is the range, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I have to make. And the companies are saying, great, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. And then you get to an offer and it doesn't happen. It's very easy to say, hey, I'm excited about this offer. Is there any flexibility to get back to the range that we had been talking about earlier? That's where I would love to see this. And that's a lot easier. If you shy away from the conversation the whole time, or if a company says to you, hey, our max for this role is $75,000. That is our max. Is that going to be okay with you? And you say yes to the process. And then the offer comes and they say, here's our best offer. It's $75,000. This is the number we talked about. And you say, well, I heard on the internet, I can always add 20% to this. So can I actually have $85,000? You might be setting yourself for an issue, right? So those honest conversations is a big part of it. So it's not the best answer anyone wants to hear because the answer is not always yes. The answer is not always no, but it's being willing to have the conversations, being open to them, and understanding when you have that kind of negotiation power and when you don't.
Love that. I agree. I've had candidates where they will be afraid to negotiate, and I can't say I can't expressly be like, ask for more, do it now. I can't do that. So in my mind, I'm like, come on. Like, I'm waiting for you to say something. I've had candidates where they want to negotiate, they do that, but I have reached and literally have given them every single thing that they asked for, and I can't give them any more, and they are still pushing. At that point, when you get to a point where you sound more ungrateful, then it's a conversation of where, am I pushing the needle so hard that the company is about to rescind? Or the company is about to go into another direction. It's nothing wrong with negotiating, but you do have to come to a compromise where you say the company did actually give me every single thing that I asked for. And if you keep pushing, at that point, you have to then consider, well, is this position actually really for you? And in addition to that, you also have to consider if you interview well enough to continue to push at the same time. So the performance part is also on you to be able to negotiate, to prove that you are worth negotiating. And I hate to say it that way, but there are times where we literally will encounter candidates who possibly didn't do well in their interview. They look great on paper, but they possibly didn't perform in their interview and they want to push the needle. And that can be a little bit of a toss up. So like Mike said, it kind of depends on the situation. We'll never say don't negotiate. Like we'll never be like, don't ask for no more money. Because I always tell candidates, if a company rescinds immediately after you ask for more money, you have to honestly ask, like, is that company, does that company really have my best interest at heart? And so it can't be a point where you're scared to negotiate, because then you're actually not exercising or operating in your worth. So great answer. Next question, Chas, I'm coming to you. I was coming to you. I lost my question. Actually, yeah, I do want you to answer this question. I know you didn't pick it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do organizations find it difficult to give people without practical experience a chance to learn?
Ooh, great question to ask me, Shanae. Thank you. Well, that one, I actually, in my current role, recruit for some really specialized positions. Some of them, are senior level roles, or kind of like Nicole mentioned before, when we're like searching for skills, sometimes you have to have these certain skills that are necessary for these different roles. So in that case, that could cause you to not get looked at in the case of applying for roles that have those special skills that they're really looking for. Myself, I do like to try to have those discussions. It might be that you have a few of the skills on your resume, but maybe you don't have the third. That might be something that's required. But having been a career coach and things like that, I know that sometimes things aren't on the resume, even if you might have that experience. So I like to try to have that conversation anyways, to see and talk about those skills that you might have. But I would say that depending on the type of role, if it is one that is a specialized role that could be more senior level, or one that's really specific and this person needing to use a specific software, it could be the reason why someone wouldn't be able to, just based on something like transferable skills.
Ileana, and I'm going to ask Kevin if you can chime in on this as well. Why are positions from certain companies that are no longer accepting applications pop up a few weeks later under a new job posting?
So this is just from my experience as a recruiter for a couple years. But from what I'm seeing so far, just from my experience, is sometimes the company may reopen the position. Maybe they're unable to find a suitable candidate right during the initial hiring process. Sometimes they're actually changing the scope of the role. So they're going to close the position and reopen it, add new extra skill sets that may be needed. So when we reopen it, then we gain those new candidates that are actually matching the skills that they're looking for. And then sometimes I would also say that if we have like a job posting on LinkedIn and sometimes they expire, we want to renew the job posting, right? So it might just pop up that's a brand new role. It just opened like an hour ago and you've seen it before, but the job posting is actually expiring. So we want to renew that job posting to get more candidate pipeline.
Yeah, from my experience, I mean, that could be something as simple, like you were saying, the leveling could be off. They could have went on a hiring freeze and they just, got confirmation from their internal workforce planning. Maybe they're going in a different direction. It could be a multitude of things.
What I've also learned too is that it could be that, I don't know if y'all said this, and I apologize if I'm repeating it, but it could be that sometimes a hiring manager may change what they want in their minimum qualifications, which is a material change. If that material change happens by compliance, we have to literally repost the role and consider all new candidates. So if you see something that says that is being reposted and you apply to the role and you got a disqualification email, it could very well be because the hiring manager took another look and maybe they're not getting the applications that they were hoping for, and then they make a material change to the job description. If that happens, you'll see the identical job reposted, and then the hope is that you apply again. As a recruiter, it is difficult to reach out to every single person who was disqualified, because that could be hundreds of people, and say, hey, this position is being reposted. Do you mind um, reapplying to the role? So when we repost it, we're reposting for the public to see it again and hoping that you'll apply or you'll see it again, just an FYI. So Kevin, should one apply if they don't check all the boxes? This is about to be a great debate.
It's a good question. I think it depends on how technical the role is. If it's, in technical engineering, or if it's a fast food job, I would say, the boxes that need to be filled would be, pretty low. But if it's more on the technical side, I would say, at least 75%. And I think the biggest thing from that is candidates knowing the difference between soft skills and hard skills and requirements and nice to have skills that aren't necessarily required.
Love that. Now it's been many debates on LinkedIn about if you meet 80% of the qualifications, apply. If you meet 70% of the qualifications, apply. And I've seen recruiters get like canceled at this point because they tell the truth about if a candidate doesn't meet the minimum qualifications for a role and we disqualify hundreds of candidates and only send over 4, then that's a part of the reason for that is, and it's funny because the recruiter gets blamed for that, but you have so many recruiters online saying, if you don't have a material qualification that is listed on the job description, apply anyway. And for me, I always tell people you are setting yourselves up if you do that. If you apply to roles that you know you don't qualify for, if you go to the responsibilities and you say, oh, I can do that. I've done that before. Like literally everybody can go to a job responsibility and say, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. I did that before, but I didn't meet those minimum qualifications. I was getting a bunch of rejection emails and notices, but I wasn't really reading the job description in its totality. And so while I understand and while we all understand this job market is extremely frustrating, make sure you use your due diligence in whether you meet the minimum qualifications or not. Now, that is not to say that if you apply to a role and you meet 80 to 85% of those minimum qualifications that you won't be hired, because it has happened. What I am saying is if it does happen and you are hired, the risk that company takes is if someone who meets 100% of those qualifications decides to complain, and the people in the line of the hiring of the person who only met 85% of those qualifications are on the hook for why was this person hired over someone who meets 100% of those qualifications. People can pull out bias around why this person was hired. It's like the level of compliance and law that we have to follow is very extravagant. And so when people say, oh, that won't hold up in court, it may not, but we don't want to go to court either. So just know that if we take our time and very carefully go through people who literally meet 100% of those qualifications and you're being ignored because you don't, part of the reason is because it's our job to follow the law. You may not agree with that, but that is the actual 100% truth. Mike, I'm going to finish off with you, and then we're going to go to, actually, no, I'm going to finish off with Mike, and then I'm going to go to a general question, and then we're going to go to the questions in the comments. When interviewing, what is the best way for job seekers to ask, to answer the question of why they are leaving their current organization?
Yeah. So I always give a bit of a generic answer here. And part of that answer is mostly with like the truth, but from a career focus, right? So a couple of things you want to avoid. And I say this to people all the time, like you don't get to, you cannot use the word toxic. You cannot use the word dramatic. So avoid any non-verifiable individual reasons, right? Because think of this like dating, that if you were on a first date with someone and the conversation came up, why are you single? And you were to start to say like, well, my last ex was really toxic and they created all this drama and everyone would go, they made everyone miserable all around them. Like you're probably not going on a second date either. You can never really tell where that truth comes from. So focus everything, no matter what the reason is, on your career, right? So for some people, it is as simple as I'm ready for the next step in my career. And that can be a very true reason. For some people, if you've been fired, I've been fired, right? And the conversation from being fired is not focused necessarily on the negative firing aspect in the people, but still career focused, right? So you're focused on, I was brought into this company and I was expecting the role to be X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, that wasn't really what the role was. It was more along this other lines, and my skills weren't proper for it, and I wasn't getting the best work done. I wasn't being used right, and it made sense to find a place where we'd all be happier. Now, none of these are exact scripts. Like, please don't write this down and think like this is what I have to go say. The idea, though, is it's simply focused on I want to be working somewhere where the skills I have and the things I want to learn are available to me here. And I'm looking for that at the next opportunity. So, to say why you need to say why you have to leave is very individual because I don't know your reasons. The key is just make sure it's focused on your career and not on these unverifiable kind of like he said, she said factors that can weigh in.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, so generalized question, then we're going to go to the chat. Nicole, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, just to plus one to that, I think the way you frame things is a really huge way as to how it's going to be perceived. And this was something that helped me a lot when I got laid off. There's the route where you can be really upset. You can talk about how toxic the environment was, how upset it was you were laid off. And that can sometimes be perceived as one way. But I know something that helped me a lot have the conversation is to say, hey, when somebody asks, why are you looking? Hey, due to certain market conditions, there were different reorgs in my company, but I'm really excited because that gave me the opportunity to pivot to an industry like yours that I'm really excited about. And this opportunity that I think I could really add value for. Pivoting and focusing on what's next as opposed to what happened, I think is the key to talking about maybe some not so great exits. I've seen people talk about how they were fired, but reframed as, hey, there was an environment where I felt there wasn't flexibility or autonomy to do the work that we needed to. And that's why I'm so excited to work for a company like yours that has a startup environment where I can wear different hats, add value in different ways. Those kinds of switches in your head, I promise you will make the world of difference, because I was telling people that I was laid off, like recruiters, when I was interviewing, and people were like, wow, that's really great. Like from me telling them that I was like laid off. And I think it's just that pivot, that mind switch, that reframe that does go a long way.
I definitely agree. Generalized question. How can we as job seekers network with hiring managers to see what skills, years of experience, certifications, and degrees matter to them most? This will help a lot because using the job descriptions are becoming confusing and difficult to understand. Anybody can go first.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I think the question has to do, and I don't know, right, if the person there wants to jump in, like is the question more based on you see a description and you want to reach out to the manager to learn more as like an informal conversation?
Yeah, it's more along the lines of I read a job description and maybe I apply reading the job description and I could have misunderstood the job description, or the hiring manager may want something above and beyond what the job description explains. How can I network with that hiring manager, or get in touch with that hiring manager to fully understand what they're looking for that is or is not explained in the job description?
I don't know if this is controversial to say, but I think there's a very low likelihood that happens.
Yep.
I think that might be where our silence is coming from. So if you think about it, I know that people get really hung up on the hiring teams, but the first step of the process, unless there's no recruiting team, it's going to go through the recruiter. And I totally empathize with the fact that there are a lot of job descriptions that are horrendous and are super unclear. And I would absolutely encourage you, if you enter the process, to ask clarifying questions to understand what day-to-day it's going to look like if it's not clear. I think the likelihood that you are probably going to be able to ask those questions when you're not being considered for the role is probably on the lower side, just given the volume of applicants that are coming in. So I would always encourage you to read through the job description, try and understand and match your resume as best you can. Might not be perfect. And then if you enter the process, then take the time to ask those clarifying questions.
Now, here's why we are saying it's going to go through the recruiter first. It does not mean, let me make this very clear, because y'all like to cancel us. So let me make this very clear. It does not mean that the hiring manager does not want to talk to you. That's not what that means. What it means is that the hiring manager is getting pinged internally from people who are internally interested in the role. They're getting emails from their team because they are still working. They may be pulled into different meetings with their superiors or heads of departments, so on and so forth. In addition to us being on their butts about picking candidates and reviewing candidates and giving us answers because y'all are asking us for answers. So with that, it is going to be very difficult for a hiring manager to set aside time to talk to candidates who probably didn't even apply to their job yet, who probably won't apply to their job after they completely, fully understand what the Ashley Mason, y'all do cancel us. I don't care what y'all say. Y'all do cancel us. So it's probably very difficult for a hiring manager to set aside time for people who they are not totally sure if they're going to apply to their role, in addition to all of the other responsibilities that they have inside of their businesses. It doesn't mean, like I said, it doesn't mean that they don't want to talk to y'all. It also very much means, oh, my brother's here. If y'all see Eric Coleman, that's my actual real brother. Say hi. Hey, say hi to Eric, y'all. So it doesn't mean that they don't want to talk to you. It just means that if a hiring manager puts their position on LinkedIn and they say, I'm the hiring manager, do y'all know y'all gonna bombard that hiring manager? Like, y'all will bombard that hiring manager. Again, it doesn't mean the recruiter doesn't want you to bombard them, but it is our job to filter out candidates so that our hiring manager doesn't feel overwhelmed with the process either. So we have to take on some of that, if not all of that load. So to get to the nitty gritty of that question. Okay. So go ahead, Mike.
I want to kind of add on this, and this is sort of what we're kind of getting on, but this is something I don't know that like people on the candidate side see. And I feel bad for you. And I do not say this from a side of like, woe is us by any means. But so I had this post go viral a few months ago where I logged into my ATS system on a Sunday night. Now, keep in mind, I at this time worked for a small startup company. I was a one-person recruiting team, and I had 4 open roles. And I opened up my ATS, and I had 1,700 applications that came in over the weekend. And I'm one person who has 17 applications to see on Monday. And then I got, and then I got 600 LinkedIn messages over the weekend about those 4 roles to go along with the 1,700 applications. So like, it's not a like leave us alone, right? It's not a job seekers shouldn't be trying. It's not any of that. But when I see people kind of get frustrated and say, well, we do reach out, we do try, we do this, I don't hear back, I'm getting ghosted, I'm getting this. It's not ghosting for one, like if you message someone, they don't reply. But, it's not that you're being ignored. But just imagine 1,700 resumes and 600 emails like in one day and saying, I have to respond to every single person or they're going to hate me, right? When I get 1,700 applications, 1,699 people are going to think I did my job poorly at the end when only one gets the job. So it's not like a give me forgiveness or anything like that, but like it is important to understand that side when you're not hearing back and you don't know what's going on, that like that's often what's going on.
And it also goes to the point too of like if you feel ghosted, those of us who actually care about candidates, I will hope that's majority of recruiters, but we have some bad ones. The good ones, on the other hand, though, there are times when, like for me, for example, I lose y'all messages and I'm praying that y'all follow up because I get so many DMs and I'm hoping that the person who I was talking to, I cannot remember their name, and if I can't remember your name, I can't find you. So I'm hoping that you say something so you don't feel like I ghosted you. So it's okay. So to that point, it's also okay to follow up with the recruiter because we do get so many messages. It is important for us to take some time to welcome the follow-up. So it's okay to follow up recruiters, y'all, just an FYI. Okay. So I want to go to the live questions. We have about 25 minutes left. We want to get to as many live questions as we can. So, okay, first question. How does an applicant tracking system work? For those of you who don't know, ATS means applicant tracking system. How does an applicant tracking system work? What is the applicant tracking system program that large companies or corporations utilize? Anybody?
I can go off mute also because somebody made a comment that says Nicole's head movements, and I've never thought about it. Now I'm wondering what my head has been doing this whole time. Probably because I've been like very passionately agreeing with a lot of panelists. So at the very bare bones basic levels, an applicant tracking system is a filing cabinet that keeps track of applicants. And I know that sounds simple, but that's really what it is. It's literally just a platform that on our side, we see resume comes in, push resume through to stages that say interview process. If we need to do additional checks, push it through to offer stage, and then the system helps us create an offer. Basic level, that's what it is. And that's what 90% of companies, ATSs, do. Now, there's a ton of different systems, and you would think that large corporations often use a specific one. In some of the largest corporations I've worked with, they've built their own, so it's not going to be one that you will ever be able to find or do research on. At the bare basic, holds resumes and lets you create an offer letter. At the very nuanced, it really is a true database where we can use keywords, we can use searches to look back at this huge database and collection of resumes to help us revisit people who have previously interacted or applied for roles with us. And it does have some capabilities to have things like ranking of keywords at the very, very opposite end of the spectrum. But ATSs are really a spectrum. And at the very bare bones basic level, it's a filing cabinet that helps us take resumes and make offer letters.
Forgot I was on mute. Sorry. Next question. Do recruiters put the question up, Shanae? Ashley Mason, the one who said that they're not going to cancel recruiters. I'm holding you to that, Ashley. Do recruiters and hiring managers take serious or value self-employed experience?
I think I could kind of speak to that. I'm not self-employed, but being in I've been in the technical engineering space, and it's kind of hard when you're working on certain, when they're looking for certain technical aspects, it's hard to get that experience depending on what industry you're in. I think I'm in a very niche industry, so that's just my 2 cents.
Next question. Do you think it is better to put your education on top skills section and then your job? Okay. Do you think it's better to put your educations above your job history, or would you recommend, or how would you recommend your resume to be?
I would say,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if they're entering the workforce and they're on the junior level, I think that's probably the smart way to go. Versus if they were a senior, someone who had 10 years of work experience, then I would put the education at the bottom.
And I put something in the chat too that I just want to reiterate because I know the chat moves real fast too. We as job seekers, and I say as someone who was on the market twice in an 8-month span as well, have a tendency to overthink everything. and want the perfect answer. And I know I keep going back to that same thing because it's true. Like, there's not a perfect way to do this. If you're super junior, then yes, put your education up at the top, right? Your best accomplishments are usually going to be at the top of your resume. But there isn't an answer to this. There isn't do I need a skills section and then a summary, or do I need this section and then this section? Like, it can vary for everyone. And this is why resume advice is frustrating. It's why you hear different pieces of advice from different people who you trust and different people who do know things, because there's not a universal resume playbook, right? The key is just looking at your resume and thinking, does this get the point across? Can this easily be seen what I need to be seen on here? Are my skills being demonstrated? Are my accomplishments being demonstrated? If it means ditching your skills section to add some more experience, that's great. If it means shrinking your experience to add a skills section, that's great. If it means this at the top or this at the bottom, like, that's okay too. Like, don't chase the perfect what's everyone doing, and figure out, how do I get what I need to be seen like early in this resume, which I know isn't like the most helpful, I guess, but it's also just like, there's not the answer to chase. You don't all have the same resume. Everyone who got hired didn't have the same resume.
Facts. Next question. The job posting is listed as entry level, and you apply as new into the field with ample experience and transferable skills. Why is it hard for hiring managers to give someone a chance? I think the silence pretty much says we're not hiring managers. Go ahead.
So this is a tough one and might also be like a little bit of a hot take. So to your point, we're not hiring managers. There are plenty of times where I see resumes, I'll pass it on to the that I think are a fit with transferable skills, and pass it on to the hiring manager, and they say no. I think this is a broader conversation about how challenging the market is now, because I see post after post of folks applying to roles that they feel they're overqualified for, and frustrated that they're not getting an entry level when they have far surpassed that experience. And I think what the tough reality of it is that there are so many people in the job market right now that it sometimes allows managers to see you in a lens of, if you're applying to a role that is your current role, they say, okay, this is your current experience. But like, for example, one that I see come up often is a recruiter who's been a recruiter for 10 years getting declined for a recruiting coordinator. I know this is a really hard reality, but I think the tough reality of it is that there's a ton of really qualified recruiting coordinators. There's a ton of really qualified entry-level people that are in the exact position, in the exact day-to-day of what this entry-level work is. And of course, if you far surpass this, you can definitely do those. But if you have people that are already qualified, I think that's sometimes where it's challenging as a job seeker to not understand why, if you're higher than the level you're applying to, you're not getting it. But that might be one of the reasons why.
Facts. Next question. What is the most optimal site to apply for internships, such as the actual job site, reaching out to a recruiter and manually, and or through job search tools such as LinkedIn, Indeed, etc.?
So I've actually had at a couple previous companies that I've worked at, we've actually used Circa and Handshake, which are integrated into pretty much almost every major university. I would definitely, start with that. I would also look at companies that you're targeting and see if they have any recruiters that work on the early career side of things. That's what I would start with.
Okay. Say the bad recruiter asked me what I am looking to make, and I found out after the phone call that I lowballed myself. So my interview is Thursday. How do I negotiate? I really asked for $20,000 less than what the job pays. Mike, I think this is what you were talking about.
Yeah, and I definitely want other people to dive in if they want to. I feel like I'm someone who always just unmutes very quick and starts talking. So there's a really long answer to this, but I'll try and sort of shorten it. There's a thing that a lot of people don't understand that goes on inside of companies, where companies have what they call internal equity. And it's important to understand at a minimum that pay is not just sort of like made up for every candidate and every role as it comes in. if a company has a range of salary, let's say $80,000 to $100,000 for a graphic designer, what that means is a level 1 graphic designer here is probably making $80,000, and a level 4 graphic designer is making $100,000. And where you fall in your pay and your offer is somewhere in that scale. So even if you don't get $100,000, right, it's not that you necessarily got lowballed. This exists because you fell maybe into their level 1 or level 2 within this company. Now, the plus side of this also means they're not going to pay you $60,000 as a level 1 graphic designer either, because that is also going to mess up their internal equity. I know we like to think that every company is sort of like this big evil conglomerate, and many are, sure. But in general, when it comes to sort of pay in this way, companies have a ladder and an equity scale and try and get people into the proper ranges. So the fear of, like, if I talk about money and I'm way under their range, they are going to just pay me way under the range is generally untrue. They generally will still try to keep you within that range that makes sense within the company. I've seen this happen. I've seen people be offered way more than sort of they initially asked for because of that. That's where those stories come from. And it is important to know that a lot of that goes on, and people who work in HR spend a lot of time designing these equity plans within the company.
Okay, my pause is just in case I see anybody else come off mute. Next question. Is there an opportunity to win back an interview after you received a rejection email early in the process? Example, you've interviewed with the company and don't feel like you performed your best and received a rejection. Nicole, you were shaking your head extra hard. So I think that's what they were talking about. So maybe
I know. I'm starting to think I do it for every question because now I'm looking at myself and I'm just like, yeah, I love recruiting. I love talking about this stuff. I think that there is, but not always for that same role. So there's been a ton of times where it's a near miss for plenty of different reasons. It might be because someone else just edged you out on experience. It might have been that at that time there was just one skill set that the org needed just a little bit more than the skill set that you had, but that's not to say that you wouldn't be a terrific fit at the company. And so I always encourage candidates to stay in touch, sometimes with the hiring team, but definitely with your recruiter that you worked with throughout the process, especially if you've already been interviewing. I think that I've seen plenty of experiences where I always try and keep in touch of those near misses. As soon as another role comes up that I think could be a fit, reach out. But because sometimes we don't always have the best systems to support us, I always encourage people to, whenever they get the rejection letter, still send the thank you notes to your recruiter, to the team, still thanking them for their time. If you're open to it, but if you see another role that comes up in the future, absolutely send it to the recruiter. Say, hey, I saw this other role popped up. Would I be able to be considered? And there's a fair shot that you might be able to be considered for another role and turn the situation around. I've seen it plenty of times. I've hired people that was a near miss for one role and another role came up, and it worked out. And so I definitely wouldn't say take yourself out of the running. Just keep in touch with your recruiter.
So what Nicole is mentioning is what we call repurposing candidates. We do it all the time. So I actually have done it with the company I work for plenty of times. I've also done it with Duke when I worked for Duke. So it is actually our job to repurpose candidates. That's the goal of the candidate experience. If you don't get hired with the recruiter, the job that the recruiter is assigned to with that particular role, and if a recruiter knows another role that could possibly be of interest to you and you meet those qualifications and you apply, then we can reach out to the hiring manager, even if it's not assigned to us, or the recruiter, if it's not assigned to us, to say, hey, I have this candidate. They might have been a silver medalist or a bronze medalist type of candidate. They received positive feedback on their interviews and was wondering if you have a role for them. That's something that we do all the time that should actually be a part of our jobs. I actually had somebody get rejected, somebody in another company. She just messaged me and said, I got rejected. And I said everything you told me to say. And the VP was like, well, you got rejected for this role. Would you consider this role? And it was like another director role. So it does happen, just an FYI. Next question. I was told from a recruiter or hiring manager my law enforcement cyber crime experience was not what they were looking for, but wanted someone that had private industry cyber experience. I don't think that's a question. I think that's a comment. I'll go past it. Lee, if you still here, elaborate. Should we apply for jobs that have been open for a while, like 30 plus days? Everybody say yeah.
If you don't apply, you have a 0% chance of getting the job. I'll leave it at that, right?
I agree with
100%
that.
of the shots you don't take. Even if it's a low shot because it would open 30 days, you're not getting it if you don't apply.
Absolutely. So my role was open. I didn't know that I came in to my role. I think the role was posted in multiple locations and they were hiring multiple recruiters. But someone told me that they applied to the same role I applied to in June, and I didn't apply until September. So although they were hiring multiple people, I applied 3 months after the guy did, and we started on the same day. So yeah, I agree with Mike. You missed 100% of the shots.
I see one follow comment that I just want to address. But what if they have 2K applicants in those 30 days? Don't believe all the stats that LinkedIn puts out, because all that stat is how many people clicked on the job, not how many people applied. So I would not let the amount of applicants discourage you.
Facts. And LinkedIn is not an official applicant tracking system, y'all. So I do not know of any company that uses LinkedIn specifically as an official applicant tracking system, because applicant tracking systems have like compliance and audit attached to it that they can't technically attach to LinkedIn because it's not an official applicant tracking system. What LinkedIn does is sometimes there are two things that LinkedIn will do. Either LinkedIn will sweep your job from the actual website and put it on LinkedIn under that jobs tab, or if you see a job that is in that jobs tab and it normally says meet the hiring team, and that will be a recruiter's picture next to it where you can send that recruiter a message and say, hey, I'm interested in the role. That if the recruiter's picture is there, that probably, not all the time, but that probably means that recruiter actually created a project in a tool that we use called LinkedIn Recruiter for the hiring manager. In that way, it's still not considered an applicant tracking system, but it helps hiring managers have visibility into all of the applicants that could possibly be interested in their role if they did not see it on the official company website. What hiring managers will do is they'll say, recruiter, reach out to Chastity since she says she was interested in my role. Reach out to her to see if she applied officially on the website. So you'll hear me say all the time, show your interest on LinkedIn, but also follow that link and find it on the official website, so you don't have to, so the recruiter or hiring manager doesn't have to wait for you to actually apply officially. So to Nicole's point, those numbers are not always true. You always just want to go straight to the company website to actually officially apply. So don't let those numbers discourage you. Oh, great. Go back, Shanae. Okay. Since big tech receives thousands of applications for a single role, what differentiates the candidate from those thousands of applicants from a recruiter to reach out to them, as the resumes might have keywords or even the experience? I feel like this question is for me because I'm in big tech. How do I answer this question? So there are a number of reasons why I will start with there. I'm trying to answer so I don't get in trouble. There are a number of reasons why a position may have thousands of applicants in it. One of the reasons could very well be because, say, for example, the position is posted in multiple locations, or the position may be hiring more than one person. When we see thousands of applicants in that are in the like apply bin or wherever, it is very difficult to go through 1,000 people. So we will use keywords, Boolean searches, which all recruiters will use. Now we can use a keyword. It doesn't mean that we're not going to read your resume, because there have been plenty of times where I have said something like, I'll put in a keyword, and based on that keyword, I'll have 100% match. And when I read the resume isn't even set up based on what the hiring manager is looking for. So it's not always like just putting in the keyword. It's also how you apply on your resume what the job description is asking for. So for example, if you are a software engineer and a job is asking you for a certain number of years of experience in a certain programming language, and one of us as recruiters types in that programming language into a Boolean search, and that programming language comes up, and the only part that you have that's listed in that programming language is on your in your skill section, but you don't apply or tell us where you applied that programming language, it is difficult to understand where you use that programming language and if you have the years of experience as the job description is asking for. So if I put in the programming language as a keyword, you're going to pop up because you put that keyword on your resume. But if you don't explain the application of that keyword, then we're going to go past you like any other applicant. So it's not enough to just put a keyword or a key phrase on it. It's all in how you actually applied it and whatever accomplishments you had around it, like quantifying what you did within that specific skill set. It's an art to being able to explain it. And so that's why I normally, if people need help with their resumes, I just refer a resume writer that I trust, because I don't trust all the writing services either. But it is difficult to go through 1,000 people, hands down. Okay, 2 more questions. So we have 4 minutes left. What would make a candidate stand out? It is so difficult to even get an interview. It is. Chastity, you look very puzzled. I haven't heard from you in a long time.
I actually was just looking at the question again. I was like, I'm probably going to answer that one. So, kind of what we've talked about in a few of our responses here about those qualifications, especially if it's like a really technical role, like Kevin mentioned, and meeting those qualifications can be important in that aspect. Or if it's more entry level, being able to really talk to those transferable skills that you have, like Shanae mentioned, being able to showcase where you've utilized those skills, or, maybe a project that you were working on that you utilized it in, or a specific job where you were using that skill. But I agree also with what Nicole mentioned earlier. The market is definitely different these days. So there is a whole lot of competition when it comes to landing those interviews. So I can definitely, understand that aspect of it, but making yourself stand out can sometimes be as easy as sometimes mentioning or knowing someone who works there and being able to get a referral, or even reaching out to recruiters, to kind of showcase those skills. But as Mike mentioned, we all have inboxes full of messages every single day, and they keep coming in as well. So really being able to apply to those jobs that are ones that you're qualified for and you can speak to that experience can help give you that step towards getting that interview. But also the market is really so saturated right now. So kind of a roundabout answer to that question, but I think it kind of covers a few of the aspects.
Good question. Or good answer. I'm sorry. Let me see. Okay. That's what I was looking for. How long do recruiters hold on to your information if you don't fit the role you initially applied for?
Well, I think there's actually a feature I've seen it in a couple different systems that I've used, where if a candidate applies for a role and for whatever reason they decide they don't want to move forward, they can actually choose to anonymize their profile and take away their contact information. I've seen it a few times. I have some experience with it, but I don't really think there's as far as the timeline goes on how long we keep your information in the ATS system. I mean, you know, I don't know until you respond back to my messages.
So I will say that I've never gotten rid of like one particular candidate's information, because by law, by federal law, we have to keep resumes with the company at least 1 to 3 years, 3 years at most. Now, I'm trying to, don't quote me on this because I don't know digitized versus having handheld filing systems, because we don't really have those anymore. When it was handheld, if you kept hard resumes on file more than 3 years, it becomes a liability to the company. So with the applicant tracking systems, it is different because your resumes are going to be inside of the applicant tracking system. So the company is not necessarily holding like hard, like it's not like in person holding your resume, but it's digitized. So to your question, we don't discard resumes. If anything, we may put them in a different category, and then we may refresh whether, or reaching out to you, whether you're still interested in coming to the company. Now that's to say that if you have not heard from a recruiter in a while, it does not mean that your information has been discarded. Remember, like for a company I work for, millions of people have applied to the company. So it may be a while before I get back to you or what other recruiters. But I don't think we, like as recruiters personally, we don't discard your information personally. You would have to say, I'm not interested in your company anymore. We just put you in a specific category so we know. Okay. I am going to stay to answer a few more questions. You guys are welcome to hop off. I said I was going to respect your time, so you are free to go if you'd like. If you don't want to, you are also welcome to stay. I'm going to stay and get these last, bye Chess. Last 7, it's only 7 questions on here, and then I'm going to go. Ileana, you are more than welcome. Tell the kiddos I say, hey. Okay. Actually, it's 6 questions. Really quickly. Does years of experience matter if you're already proficient in the job requirements?
This is not a definitive answer, and this is tough because unfortunately it's not something that you as a candidate is going to know. There are certain compliance laws that certain companies are held to and certain companies are not. Usually your indicator is the bigger the company. Oftentimes they will have to follow these compliance laws. And so, for example, when I was working for Fang, if the job description said 4 years or more, if somebody had 3 years and 11 months, couldn't hire you for that job. There are other companies where it is a preferred, it is a target. We're looking for 8 years of experience or relevant years of experience in this project space. So I would take a look at job descriptions to kind of give you a clue. But there are some companies, like I said, sometimes typically tends to be large tech, where the years of experience do matter. And if you don't meet it, we're not able to proceed.
What's the thought behind posting a job as entry level but requiring 5+ years of experience? We don't know. There is no thought. We have no idea.
Just don't.
Can I make one defense of the industry really quickly?
Go.
And I know it's a silly one. I want to say this. First of all, I want to say I agree. I agree it's stupid. But also, like, the whole idea behind realistic recruiting is also like, here's the what falls into this. So this is a dumb thing that happened in the business world a very long time ago. And the term entry level, as used in a company, does not mean 0 experience. And it's often a misconception. Entry level often is used in a company to mean the entry to that company. So if an entry level at one company is 2 years of experience, that means their entrance is on the 2nd floor, right? So it is dumb, and it's really annoying as a job seeker because you want it to just mean no experience. But like at that company, entry level might mean 2 years experience. Also on LinkedIn, most job descriptions, when you post them, default to entry level, and most people don't go through and actually edit them. That also does happen. But in general, that's where this misconception comes from, because a company files it as entry level, even though in our mind, that's not what entry level should mean. So it is worth keeping that in mind sometimes. But I will not defend it.
You just taught me something because I always wondered that too. How much does asking for a visa sponsorship affect an application?
Well, I think first and foremost, you want to make sure that it's, the company is working with people on that. If it's something that's, they're not doing sponsorship, then I mean, you're just, you know, banging your head up against the door pretty much. Especially right now with the given market, a lot of companies that usually are not. So
Yeah, I mean, like Kevin said, sometimes it's available for companies, sometimes it's not. I've worked for companies where it has been and companies that it hasn't been. So it's it's not, I guess, affecting you in a negative way. Like if you need a sponsorship and the company can provide it, but if you need it and they don't want to, like it's not that. It's more of if they have the budget to, if they're a company who can and stuff like that. So that is when it comes to affecting it. Second to last question. Do you recommend writing cover letters? I'll take this one. So I like cover letters. A lot of people don't. I do because it helps you to further explain above and beyond what your resume does not give you room to. Now, cover letters are a thing of the past. A lot of people will agree to that. Cover letters honestly help me get my jobs though. So I am all about using what still works. If a cover letter is considered old, and it helps, then I'm writing the cover letter, hands down. It shoot at this point, because resume paper, people don't even know what resume paper is now. If resume paper would still help, I would use resume paper. I would just say use what works for you. And part of that is because in law school we were just trained to write cover letters with every job that we applied to. But writing cover letters honestly helped me to explain what I do and the most important things that I do, which actually prepared me for my interviews because it made me be concise. And writing out what I've done and all the important things that I've done in a concise manner in a cover letter really helped me be concise and not be long-winded in my interview. So you can possibly use a cover letter to practice in that way if you haven't thought about it that way. And honestly, if a company asks for it, write the damn cover letter. Like if you can have one additional document that'll help, an addendum in some way, I don't think it's anything wrong with it. Even if you don't think the company would read it, write it anyway, just in case. Last question. I noticed that there are levels to rejection. The rejection letter that mentions we went forward with another candidate, but we will keep your resume on file if anything changes. Can this be seen as a green light to reapply?
I feel like this is just wording. This is one of those things where we're overthinking it again and looking for signs and stuff. Companies create a template that they reject people with. And some of it says, we will keep you on file. And some says, and we're sorry we don't hire you. I've been at companies, I don't like it. I've been at companies that like send all these resources and other places to go look for jobs, and it feels a little condescending to me, but I understand like why it happens sometimes. But like, they're all just templates. It's not necessarily a different level of rejection. It's just how that company chooses to sort of reject you in that way is the honest answer. I wouldn't read into it as more of a green light, other than if it's like a final interview and you had a specific phone call with them and they really talked to you about how they loved you and wish they had two roles, right? That's a different world. But if you're just like getting these rejection templates, don't look for signs in them. We have to stop looking for signs in every little thing and sort of just like accept what is happening.
Facts. Okay, that was the last question I started. I know y'all asked a million other questions in the chat, but we cannot get to it. So I will have another kickback probably in the next 2 weeks or so. But thank you to all of my panelists who took time out of their personal time. Y'all, this is their personal time for some of us. So please make sure you are being kind to recruiters, especially us, because we try our best every single day. Connect with the panelists. I will put their links in here one more time. Mike, if you want to put your TikTok in here again as well, please do so for people who did not catch that. He's also famous on TikTok. Nicole is famous on LinkedIn and all other social media platforms. Kevin is also famous, and everybody else that was on this panel was also famous. y'all, we understand that the job market is stupid. I've been saying it for as long as possible because it is, but we hear you, we see you, we are doing our best to help you, which is why we have these kickbacks. So please connect with hi person who's walking by, Nicole. So please connect with these wonderful recruiters. If you blow them up in their inbox, give them grace because, like I said, Nicole has 80 million followers. So if she so happened to not be able to get back to you in a timely manner, then just give her some grace. Along with Mike, you see Mike got 45,000, 80 million followers on TikTok. So give him grace and just ask questions. But make sure before you ask questions, make sure you research what we recruit for. Make sure you research the company we recruit for, because there are certain questions we cannot answer because we don't recruit for those specific roles. So just an FYI, so that all of our times are respected. Y'all have a good night. Be blessed. And as always, if God is for you, who can be against you? Y'all be good.
Good night. Bye.
See you.